Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to England once again, and we're returning to a brewery that's featured on the channel a number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are just a very solid all-round brewery. They do lots of different things and always do some really nice examples of different styles. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have tried from them before. It's one that I know they can do very well, and the exact beer is actually a variant of one that we've had from them in the past, which I know is very nice too. This is also one of their latest releases through Systembolaget here in Sweden, and when I saw this one, I thought, you know what, this is something that we really haven't looked at on the channel before. It's got a really interesting little twist to it, I have to say. So, needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Bakewell in the Peak District in the middle of England, kind of to the southeast of Manchester and to the southwest of Sheffield. That should give you an idea of where it is, just a very small town. But we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Thornbridge Brewery. So this particular beer is another variant of the Necessary Evil, an Imperial Stout. This one comes in at 13% ABV, and it is the Calvados Brandy Barrel Aged Edition. So yeah, the last beer that we reviewed from Thornbridge was the Cognac Barrel Aged version of Necessary Evil, but from what I remember that was a lovely, very smooth and very tasty Imperial Stout. But yeah, it's not all that often that you come across a brandy barrel aged beer, so this one was one that just kind of piqued my interest. But this beer was released as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden on the 27th of January 2023. It was a little bit expensive, but you know, based on my previous experience with Thornbridge, I thought it would be worth it. So yeah, we'll crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. So yeah, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. This brewery does have quite an interesting history, but if you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated. You can find all the usual links in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Thornbridge Brewery, and we will no doubt add more to that in the near future as well. But remember, you can also go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go up to the search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from your local area, they should pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries, and you'll find this one in the English playlist, and I'm sure we'll add more beers to that list going forward. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Thornbridge Brewery and Thornbridge Hall, which is of course associated with it. So yeah, Thornbridge Hall actually dates back to the 12th century, and it was the home of the Longston family until the 18th century, at which point it was bought by John Morwood. But the house changed hands many times over the following years, and it was extended into its current form in 1896 by George Marples. But the house was also a teacher training college for a period after 1945, and it was during this time that it was owned by Sheffield City Council. But the house is currently owned by Jim and Emma Harrison, who bought it back in 2002. But the couple also own a few pubs in the local area. So they own the Cricket Inn in Totley, the Coach and Horses next to the Sheffield United Stadium, and also the Inn in Tronway, which are all part of the Thornbridge Company. So these are all kind of pubs or tap rooms of this brewery. It's actually quite a traditional brewery, this one, which is quite interesting. But Jim also owns the Packhorse pub in Little Longston as well. So the estate itself, the Thornbridge estate, can be found in Great Longston in Derbyshire, and Jim and Simon Webster recruited 2 young brewers and converted some outbuildings next to Thornbridge Hall before Thornbridge Brewery was officially founded back in 2005, and you'll see that on the bottle, on the label of this one. But the original brewery was just a small 10-barrel operation, and they produced their first beer, the Lord Marples Bitter, that year as well. I think we actually had that on tap in the Bishop's Arms Gustav Adolfs Torg in Malmö very recently. But the brew house was actually a converted joinery and stonemason's workshop, and they initially wanted to produce just a small range of cask beers that could be sold in the local market, but these proved to be very popular, and of course they started to sell these over the rest of England as well. But in 2009, the larger part of the brewery production went on at the company's new headquarters in Bakewell, but some of the beers are still produced on the traditional infusion mash system in the old brewery. But the main brew kit that they're using now, from what I understand, is built by Velo, who are from Venice in Italy. But since 2009, they've expanded the brewery operations 3 times. They've grown their exports significantly as well, and in 2015 they celebrated their 10th anniversary. But today their output now exceeds 30,000 hectolitres of beer per year, which I believe is about 3 million litres, if I'm doing my calculations correct. A hectolitre is 100 litres, so yeah, 30,000 times 100 is 3 million. But yeah, as of January 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 370 different kinds of beers according to Untappd, and of course, yeah, they are a very, very well-known brewery. Jaipur IPA is probably their best-known beer, but they've got various other things out there. And you know, the Necessary Evil was a very, very well-regarded Imperial Stout. Like I said earlier, pardon me, I do still need to try the original one, but we've had a few variants of this on the channel now. But yeah, Thornbridge are probably one of the most recognisable English craft beer brands across Europe these days. They're one of the breweries who have actually still managed to export a good number of their beers post-Brexit, which has been a problem for a number of breweries from what I understand. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Thornbridge Brewery and Thornbridge Hall and Thornbridge Estate for the moment. But if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So I did actually write down some details about this beer before I did the review. So like I said to you, this one is a Calvados brandy barrel aged edition of the Necessary Evil Imperial Stout. It comes in at 13% ABV. I think the original Necessary Evil is like 12%. I know the barrel aged versions are slightly higher than the original, although it could be 11%, but you know, bear with me on that. The original version is a little bit weaker in alcohol than the barrel-aged versions, but the original Imperial Stout is hopped with Hallertau Magnum, and it's got a malt base of Maris Otter, Munich, Brown, Crystal, Chocolate and roasted malts, along with a little bit of oats and wheat. But these beers are usually very, very smooth and very kind of creamy Imperial Stouts in my experience. But yeah, I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open it up. So there you can see it is very similar to what we had with the Cognac Barrel Aged Edition, although the Cognac one had a kind of red burgundy label from what I remember. But there you can see at the top, there is the Thornbridge Brewery and Thornbridge Estate Simple. So it says on the top here, Barrel Room Series on the bottle cap. I think that's a different bottle cap from what we had before. I'll just let you have a wee look at that, but I think the light is reflecting on it a good little bit. But this one is 375 millilitres. This beer actually cost me 150 Swedish kroner, so that is about 15 euros, I guess somewhere in the region of like £13 sterling at today's exchange rate. So it was a wee bit more expensive, but I don't think it would be too much more expensive than it was back home in Scotland, actually. I mean, yeah, I don't think it would be that much more expensive there. But like I say, a 13% Imperial Stout. It tells you a little bit about the back here. This is the 2022 vintage, by the way, because I think they do this beer every year and age it in different barrels. But this limited version of Necessary Evil has been aged in Calvados barrels for 8 months. We were eager to work with this renowned brandy to create a completely unique offering. It packs a lavish punch of apple, treacle and a dash of vanilla, best served around 10 to 12 degrees. So take it out of the fridge for a while before serving. Whilst this beer will age well, there's no time like the present, so we recommend opening it and enjoying it as soon as possible. So yeah, it was 2022 vintage. It will have been in the bottle for a couple of months, and it says it's best before the 21st of the 2nd, 2024. So I don't know, you know, I would guess they would put a 2-year bottling date. So this has probably been bottled in February of 2022, I guess. But yeah, as I say, 13% Imperial Stout aged for 8 months in Calvados brandy barrels. Let's get this guy out, have a look at it, and see what it's all about. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm sure Raggy actually, of Raggy's Beers, Wines and Spirits review. I think he reviewed the original Necessary Evil, if I remember correctly, and he loved it. So yeah, I do need to get a hold of the original version of this beer and take a look at it, but I'm really not sure how easy it is to get, because we get some really random stuff over here in Sweden through the importers, because they kind of reserve it with the brewery and then bring it over here. So we get some really random stuff like Thomas Hardy and things that's very, very difficult to get in England actually. But yeah, anyway, so now that we've got the beer out of the bottle and into the glass, we can take a proper look at it. So you can see that this one is poured with about a 1/4 finger, I would say quite bumpy fawn coloured head there. You can see that. You can see the bubbles of this one are actually quite big compared to some of the other beers we've had in recent times. But the head is fading away to just be a very thin foamy layer over the top, and it's leaving a nice ring around the edge of the glass there. But it looks very, very nice. In terms of the actual colour of the beer, it's pretty much what you would expect from an Imperial Stout. If we shine the light through this beer, there's not a lot actually getting through the thing, but you know, you would kind of expect that. So this one for me is a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. If you shine the light through it, you do get a tiny little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi Max coloured edge, but that is to be expected. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. But any barrel aging you do or any adjuncts you put in can affect the colour as well. But when it comes to beers that have sort of black malt and things in them, like Imperial Stouts, it's very, very difficult to change the colour of the beer just with barrel aging. But yeah, not much in the way of visible carbonation in this one. It does look very, very kind of smooth, to be honest with you, very silky. So yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the appearance of this beer. Let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see what we have going on with this one then. Very curious about this. Yeah, that does smell very nice actually. So as I say, I'm not overly familiar with brandy barrel aging. I have tried, in the pub we had brandy barrel aged barley wine, which was quite interesting. But brandy, from what I understand, is a distillate that's made from wine. You distill the wine, and that's where you get your brandy. But yeah, the aroma out of this is really interesting. It's you can smell the big silky Imperial Stout underneath, but you can smell this sort of dry apple kind of character on top of it. It's really quite interesting that way. Yeah, but let's just try and break this aroma down for you a wee bit more, and you know, describe it a bit more in depth as we always do. Yeah, that is really interesting. So yeah, like I say, you have this. You can smell a lot of the smooth kind of, but still slightly dry European oak forming the backbone of this beer. So yeah, you've got a lovely, smooth, oaky backbone to this one. There's a little touch of vanilla in there, but you can certainly smell a little bit of the kind of winey vinous character. I'm not sure if brandy is made from distilling white wine. It would make a bit more sense, and that would be why you would get the apple qualities out of it. But you can certainly smell the smooth oak, the little touch of vanilla in there, and also the kind of white winey characters. But then, yeah, this is where you get the kind of apple and apple juice type quality coming out of this one. So yeah, I really do like how this goes together actually. Yeah, the aroma out of this is very, very nice, I have to say. But on top of the barrels, you can smell the lovely Imperial Stout qualities, and like I said, I suspect the original Necessary Evil is just this very smooth, silky, old school Imperial Stout. For me, on top of the appley notes, you know, the distillate notes, or the spirit notes, I guess we should say. You can smell this lovely, smooth, very slightly toasty, well-fired bread crusty note, but then above that, you start to get the more smooth and creamy elements of the Imperial Stout. So for me, yeah, a little bit of a roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. You can smell there's a little bit of like a kind of wholemeal brown bready character as well. Yeah, and you've got a kind of chocolatey note to this one too. There's a little bit of a darker chocolate in there, but you've also got a milky chocolate, like a sort of, at the back of the nose, you know, there's a little bit of a more, you know, 70-ish% cocoa chocolate, whereas further forward it's a bit more like a 40% cocoa chocolate. So that is quite interesting in this one. On top of all of that, though, you can smell the influence of the oats in this beer, because the chocolatey notes are actually very kind of creamy, and I'm guessing the oats are what's given the beer that more oaky. It's giving you that more sort of sweet oaky and sweet kind of vanilla type quality. But there's definitely an element of brown sugar in there. You can smell there's a little bit of sweet caramel, there's a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity type quality coming out of it as well. So yeah, there's a good few interesting things going on in this. Yeah, there's a good few interesting things going on in this particular beer. So yeah, I do like how this goes together actually. Yeah, aroma-wise, this is pretty damn nice. So yeah, the brown sugars, there's a little touch of that treacle molasses sort of thing, sweet caramel in there, a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit, and yeah, we also have that kind of nice creamy chocolatey character, and a bit of a mixed dark chocolate and milk chocolate in there, and yeah, there's wee bits of bready character and so on as well. But yeah, aroma-wise, I think it goes together really well. But as I say, it reminds me, I remember this beer being very, very smooth in terms of its aroma before. On the hoppy side of things, it is barrel aged, so you know most of the green component will kind of drop out of the beer quite quickly in that sense, but you can feel it has a really smooth character to it as well. There's a little bit of a kind of earthiness in there. There's a little bit of earthiness in there. There's a little bit of a herbal character, but you do have a wee touch of floral and grassy type note in this one as well. So it is quite noble. You know, it's Hallertau Magnum that's in this one, which is about a 5-6% alpha acid hop, and you do get that kind of smooth German noble quality coming out of this beer. But yeah, the hoppy character, as I say, is not too prominent in this one. But yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say about the green component in the aroma. It is still there, but of course the longer you age this beer, the longer you keep it, the more it will drop out. So yeah. On the fruity side of things, then let's have a wee look at that. As I've said already, you do get quite a little bit. I can see why they say apple on this one. You really do get quite a little bit of apple out of this beer from the barrel aged side of things. So you've got this kind of apple kind of note that comes out of the beer quite readily. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one, I think, is really quite nice in that sense. So above the apple, you do get a little touch of, there is a little touch of a raisiny and plummy character to it. So yeah, there's a raisiny and plummy character in there, but underneath that, you do definitely get some prune and some date and sultana as well. The prune and the date and sultana actually come in quite well with the apple, but then you've also got wee bits of fig and blackberry coming out of this beer too. So for me, that's very, very interesting in this one. So that definitely gets a thumbs up from me in this case too. Yeah, aroma wise, for me, this beer is very, very interesting. I do like this one actually. So yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it, but it smells as if it's going to be just as good as the cognac barrel aged edition one was. But of course we have got a few different flavours going on. So yeah, let's crack into this beer and see what it's all about. So this one is the Necessary Evil Calvados Brandy Barrel Aged Edition, 13% Imperial Stout from Thornbridge Brewing in Bakewell in the Peak District in the middle of England. So yeah, let's get stuck into this one. Sláinte, skål, cheers. I think this might well be my first brandy barrel aged beer, but let's do this. Oh yeah. I'm going to say straight away, this is just a lovely, big, smooth Imperial Stout. Yeah, this is as good as I remember the cognac barrel aged one being. But I think the barrel in this one is maybe not quite as prominent. That's the other thing. But yeah, that is a lovely, lovely beer. And I mean, when you think about how long Thornbridge have been around, probably what's happened is they've just thought, oh, we're going to do a really nice Imperial Stout. And they've done many Imperial Stouts over the years, but probably what's happened with Necessary Evil is they've put that little bit of extra punch into it and refined it quite a bit and thought, yeah, we've got this kind of bang on the money here. This is the one. We're going to play around with barrel aging. And they've done it, and as I say, they always do it pretty damn well, I have to say. So Necessary Evil from Thornbridge is one of the English Imperial Stouts that I think everyone really needs to try. And as I say, I'm saying that a bit hypocritically because I've never tried the original, but I can tell you something, the barrel aged editions of these beers are absolutely lovely, and I can imagine from kind of guesswork, if you like, what the original Necessary Evil would be like, just this big, smooth, creamy Imperial Stout. But beautiful beer once again from Thornbridge Brewing. We just have to give them a big thumbs up. But let's try and break this beer down for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth. But like I say, a lovely big kind of creamy, smooth Imperial Stout, and you just get the barrel on the back of it. The barrel comes out a wee bit more in the aftertaste as it did in the cognac edition. So yeah, right, middle third of your palate then. Backbone of the beer is that lovely, very smooth oaky character coming out of the beer. As I say, because it's European oak, it has a little touch of dryness, so toward the back of that middle third of your palate, you've got more of a slight dryness there, but as you move further forward, it gets smoother and smoother and a little bit sweeter. You almost get a little tiny hint of like butterscotch off it or something. But toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you've got a little touch of vanilla in there, and then you have a little bit, you've got a little bit of the kind of spirit sitting on top of that too, and it's, you know, it's distinctively brandy-ish. I haven't drunk brandy all that often, but yeah, it definitely has that sort of white wine, kind of appley type quality to it. So yeah, that's really interesting for me. You can just taste that, and as I say, the thing with this beer is that the barrel comes out more and more the further into the aftertaste that you go. Yeah, so the brandy notes in this are really very nice. As I say, brandy is not something I'm overly familiar with, so it is taking a wee bit of time to get used to that. But it's certainly done. You can tell right away, even if you're not a brandy aficionado, you know that this beer is done very well. So above the brandy notes, you start to get the Imperial Stout side of this beer, and the Imperial Stout is not overly bitter, but still you do get a little touch of a roasty, toasty, slightly well-fired bread crusty note sitting above the spirit, but at the same time it's very, 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 very smooth. So above the kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread, you've got more of a kind of wholemeal, brown bready sort of thing in there, which is quite nice, and then you've got the white bready characteristics just above that. So yeah, a little bit of well-fired bread crust, a wholemeal brown bread, then a white bready character. I think this beer contains wheat. I think it had a little bit of oat in it as well. I would be very surprised if there wasn't oats in this one, just because of how smooth it is. But yeah, the wheat, I think, has given you that very smooth white bready character. And then above the kind of white bready notes, that's when you get some of the chocolatey side of this beer. So let's have a wee look at that. So yeah, the kind of chocolatey the sort of chocolatey side of the beer. It's quite interesting because again it kind of shows what I've always said, that on the back of the palate you get the more kind of dry and bitter flavours, but further forward you get the sweeter flavours. So the chocolate in this beer really shows that. So above the white bready layer, at the back of that middle third of your palate, you've got more of a kind of dry, you've got a little bit of a drier, maybe sort of 60-ish% cocoa chocolate, but as you move forward across that, along that middle third of your palate, you can feel that it sweetens up and sweetens up and sweetens up, and you get a sort of 30% milk chocolate toward the front of the palate there, and that is very, very nice in this one. And toward the front of the palate as well, you do get just a little hint of like nuttiness out of this beer, like a sort of pecan or almond or something like that. So I'm getting some very, very subtle qualities out of the beer. But above the kind of the chocolatey layer really does smoothen out the more that you drink of this beer as well. And in the very middle of your palate, you get a sort of kind of cup that sits there, and that's where all the brown sugary side of this beer is coming out. And the brown sugars in this one, I have to say, are very nice. So you've got a base. The brown sugary part is very, very layered. So you've got a base of a very slightly leathery, smooth brown sugary character in there. But then above that, you've got a more kind of butterscotchy, butter candy type quality. And then in the dead centre of the palate, you've got a sweet caramelly note out of this one. The impression that I have of this beer, I don't think this one has had an overly long wort boil. I think it is just more a very smooth and thick malty stout. This one, it's not brewed to be like an old school RIS with that little bit of, you know, roasty toasty bitterness and stuff like that. This beer is supposed to be a more kind of smooth and slightly sweeter Imperial stout, I would say. But the brown sugary notes are lovely. As I say, going from the top down, you've got the sweet caramel, the more butterscotchy note underneath, and then a more leathery brown sugary character as well. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice. And then, as I say, you've got that smooth chocolatey character sitting underneath too. So in some ways, this is one of these stouts where it's quite straight shooting in a lot of ways. Like I think the base stout in this beer is one of these ones that's very straight shooting, but it's just really nicely brewed, and it has a lovely, very smooth flavour to it. But I think that covers everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate in this beer. Let's go on to the back third then and have a wee look at that. So, back third of the palate, you've got a little bit of that kind of, you've got a little bit of that border region in there between middle and back third of your palate, where you get a wee touch of a kind of bready build-up. And yeah, I love how that goes there, that lovely kind of bready build-up in there. I would say like smooth brown bread, like a kind of wholemeal sort of thing. But then the back third of your palate, you've got kind of similar flavours to the middle third of the palate, but they're just in different kind of quantities, if you like. So you've got that lovely smooth, you've got that lovely smooth, you do have a lovely smooth kind of, I would say, just the woody character is very, very smooth even in the back of the palate. I was thinking, is it a little bit drier? But not really, it's just very, very smooth. Then you've got a little bit of the kind of more, you've got more of a dry, appley and white wine quality from the spirit in there, but then you get all the kind of bready notes and stuff like that above it. So you've got a lovely, very tall and airy kind of wholemeal brown bready character, and you can feel there's a little bit of white bread above that as well, but it seems a little bit more dense. But these bready layers on the back third of the palate are very airy but very smooth at the same time. And then above all of that, you've got some of the kind of yeasty flavours coming out of the beer. There's maybe a little slight touch of cocoa nib, like a dry kind of cocoa nibby quality on top of the white bread on the back third of the palate there, which I do appreciate as well. That is very nice. But yeah, above all of that, you've got the kind of yeasty flavours coming out of the beer, and for me, it's like a very light wholemeal brown bread, a little bit farmhousey and just very dry and cocoa nibby actually. This is one of the few beers that on the back third of the palate I don't get a little touch of honeycomb out of. I always get this light bready honeycomby type quality from the yeasty characters, but not so much in this beer. But yeah, definitely back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is taller, and then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just condenses down and squashes together a little bit more. But yeah, that covers the malty and yeasty side of things. Let's look at the hoppy side of the beer, the green component first. So for me, the green component in this beer is really quite smooth, and quite a bit of it seems to have dropped out because of the barrel aging, but it is, the remnants are still there. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of smooth earthiness. And as you move further forward, it's a little touch herbal, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a little bit more sort of floral note to it. But as I say, it's very, very smooth because of the barrel aging and because of the inherent character of the German hops. But round the front curve of the palate, a little bit lighter and grassy. There's a wee tiny touch of zestiness to it there, but again, it works out very nicely. You know, the German Magnum hop is quite, or the Hallertau Magnum hop, I should say, does have a little bit of brightness to it on the grassy side of things, but the green component of this beer is very smooth, and Imperial Stout is not the most hop forward of styles, which you'd expect. But let's look at the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer. So first off, the border region between front third and middle third of the palate. So yeah, front third and middle third of your palate, you've got a lovely little bit of, as I say, you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of bready build up in there, and it's a wee bit of a brown bread, but it's got a slightly sweeter quality to it. But yeah, in the front third of your palate, you've got a lovely little bit of smooth woody character in there. Say lovely smooth, lovely smooth oaky character, and then just a wee bit of a, you do have a little bit of a kind of smooth brown bready note in there, but then above that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity side of the beer comes out. You do get a little bit of the kind of smooth appley layer above the wood as well, but let's focus on the actual fruity component of the beer itself. But I will say, this is not the most fruit forward of Imperial Stouts, actually. So yeah, you actually have to focus on this one a wee bit to get the fruity flavours. But yeah, when you take the beer in, you've got a little bit of a kind of oily, plummy character to it, for sure. So yeah, nice kind of oily plum. And then you start to get the dry prunes and dates and stuff underneath. And as you go into the aftertaste, we're talking back half of the front third of your tongue. So you've got a little bit of plum on top, then underneath that there's a wee bit of prune, there's a wee bit of date in there, and then you've got the sultanas actually too. As you move further forward on that front third of your palate, yeah, I'd actually say it's quite, the kind of sultana flavour spreads forward quite a little bit in this one. You get an oily apple toward the front of that front third of your palate. There is a little bit of an almost blackberry, or blackberry I would say, rather than black currant flavour sitting on top of that. But yeah, the barrel on the fruity side of things, you get a lot of the appley flavour from the brandy barrels in this one coming out, and yeah, it goes together really nicely in that sense. So you have got a wee bit of red fruit kind of sitting on top, as I say, plums, prunes, then you've got the dates and sultanas underneath them, and the apple. And as you come further forward, the apple gets more oily, and there's just a wee bit of like a blackberry or something sitting on top of that. So the fruity character in this beer is quite different. But like I say, with this one, you really do have to focus on the front third of your palate to pick up these fruity notes. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of the beer. Let's focus on the mouthfeel just to round off. So definitely a full-bodied beer for me. Yeah, full-bodied beer. I would say it's leaning toward the kind of midpoint of the full-bodied part of the spectrum. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a very creamy and sort of silky mouthfeel to it, this one. This beer, though, is very low in terms of its IBUs. It's not going to blow the head off you in terms of bitterness. It's a low IBU beer. This one, 20 IBUs would not be out of place for this. But the malt base, as we said, you've got the dry woodiness underneath from the barrel. You've got the smooth character in the middle, and then you've got the big kind of creamy notes on top and the sweetness all there. It's a lovely, as I say, the base stout in this beer is very smooth and very creamy. It's one of these beers that's very straightforward in terms of its flavours, but just really well done. And the barrel just gives you that wee bit more complexity to it. And the fruity side of the beer is quite oily and sweet for me. So yeah, for me, the way this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice, and it gets a big thumbs up. So yeah, I really do like what this beer has offered us in this review. So a big thumbs up once again to Thornbridge Brewery for this. I've not tried too many in the way of brandy barrel aged beers, but this has been a little bit of a learning experience. You know, the appley flavours and stuff have been really interesting. So yeah, this one was the Calvados barrel aged edition of the Necessary Evil, a 13% Imperial Stout from Thornbridge Brewing Company in Bakewell in the Peak District in England. A really interesting review once again. I can feel the alcohol going to my head a little bit, so I think we should round off here. But yeah, lovely beer, this one. I hope I can try the original Necessary Evil at some stage fairly soon. But once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Thornbridge Brewery, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. But until then, slange it, skull, cheers, see you guys very, very soon.